So, dear friends, it's a great pleasure to be today with you on this very relevant occasion. And first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to Berlin and for your warm reception. I am delighted to see you, and especially representatives of the young generation of the resistance. In these many years of close cooperation with you, 15 years to be precise, during these 15 years, I have realized that not only you are the backbone of a nationwide resistance against the ruling religious dictatorship, but a treasure of moral, cultural, and political values in today's world. Today, the PMOI, in advocating a tolerant democratic Islam, has become the antithesis to Islamic extremism, which has ruined the whole Middle East and is leading today this strategic region of the world towards catastrophe. The PMOI is the center of a political coalition, the National Council Resistance of Iran, which fights for democratic and pluralistic Iran and says religion and state should respect each other's independence. Several thousands of parliamentarians have expressed their support for the political platform of the NCRI. The presence of a Muslim woman at the top of this movement, who calls for a secular and democratic Iran, is extremely significant and is really a revolution in the thinking and attitude in the Islamic world. It is a fact that the PMOI have had, to say it softly, a very hard time in these 5 decades. Yes, 50 years of hardship and ups and downs, of hope and despair, of defeats and victories. It is remarkable how they have been nearly destroyed several times, but again they have managed almost miraculously to rise from ashes. For example, 5 years after their foundation, the PMOI received a brutal crackdown by the secret police of the Shah, the SAVAK. Almost the entirety of its leadership and the vast majority of its members and supporters were imprisoned, including Masoud Rajavi, then Secretary General of the PMOI. After Khomeini came to power in 1979, he soon began repressing the PMOI and initiated the mass executions in 1981. This continuous persecution reached its peak in 1988, when 30,000 of its members were executed in a massacre of horrifying dimension. So far, the Iranian theocracy has executed over 120,000 political prisoners, the majority of them from the PMOI. And this stream of crimes flows with no interruption in our present days. The PMOI has not only been brutally repressed by the mullahs, but have been a victim of the appeasement policy of the West with Iran. The only group that the Iranian regime has permanently focused has been you, the PMOI. That is why in every negotiation with the West, the mullahs have urged Western governments to restrict their activities. In 1997, the PMOI was placed in the terrorist list of the United States as a goodwill gesture towards President Khatami, who claimed to be, in the same way Rouhani is doing nowadays, a moderate. This blacklisting of PMOI was soon followed by the United Kingdom and the European Union. I got involved exactly at this critical period with the Iranian resistance. At that time, I was in my first term in the European Parliament and had been elected Vice President of the Chamber. So, when two Iranian resistance members came to see me and explained about their story, I was moved. But I still made a lot of research and even took a skeptical position because it was indeed a very sensitive issue. I researched and even played devil's advocate. But soon I realized the great injustice done to the Iranian opposition, and I decided to fight for them to be taken off the blacklist. Politically speaking, I also understood that PMOI and CRI were and are the best chance of confronting the regime of the Ayatollahs, a political and ideological project which is diametrically opposed to all democratic values I believe in. The reason I got into a little detail on this is because I think the young generation of Iran, all of you, should know what we have been through, in particular, that the mullahs are also busy making a lot of conspiracies by spreading misinformation and trying to demonize the PMOI and its leadership. Anyone who has doubts about the support for PMOI could just see how much the mullahs are prepared to do and pay to destroy this movement, to arrive to the conclusion that the PMOI is a cause worth to fight for. So the enemy tells us that we are in the right track. I call on you here to challenge and clear such misinformation against the Iranian resistance. Even though the PMOI is no longer in these blacklists, their sufferings have not ended. Several thousand of them who have been in Iraq and in Camp Liberty are cruelly repressed and are not duly protected because of the betrayal by the American government, who had promised to protect them, and of the United Nations former envoy in Iraq, Martin Kubler, a name that must be registered in the history of infamy, who actively collaborated with the Iranian regime and with Prime Minister Maliki of Iraq. In fact, we are approaching the anniversary of the 1st September massacre in Ashraf. You may know that I was head of a delegation who went to Iraq in 2008 to visit Camp Ashraf. I met hundreds of PMOI members there, and I have extraordinary memories. I am not a newcomer to politics, and in my experience working with Iranian resistance in these years, I have realized that they do not want anything for themselves. And they are making sacrifices on a daily basis, from the newest members up to the leadership. These sacrifices are for freedom in Iran and nothing else. It is the same in Camp Liberty, in Tirana, in Paris, in Brussels, or here in Berlin. They could have had better lives, but they have decided to give up many things in order to fight for the country and for their citizens. Dear friends, whenever I go to the big gathering of the NCRI in Paris, I see the enthusiasm of thousands of Iranians and hundreds of foreign guests to promote democracy in Iran. And I confirm the support, especially of the young people, for this liberation movement. This is for me and for all veterans a source of energy and a great encouragement. I'm certain you will never give out. And be sure that you have many friends in Europe and in many other places that will never fail to you. Thank you.